everybody. Welcome. Good Sunday evening to you. Valentine's Day if you celebrate it. If you don't have somebody to share it with us. We're here. We love you. Anyway, joking around, Scott Gulbransen here. Silver and Black today. Special Sunday Night Live edition. And as always, our good sponsors, Sam and Ash, help you bring this to you. Sam and Ash, to personal injury attorneys here in Las Vegas, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Call them anytime. Also want to thank our good sponsor. You guys hear me talk about this on our Raider Nation radio show all the time, and that is Dr. Jen's Ultimate Protein Bar. This is, right here, this is my crack, right here. The chocolate peanut butter banana, the best thing you can ever do. If you go to drjensnutrition.com, use the code SBT10, that's SBT10, then you get a special discount and you get free shipping. So thanks for being with us, everybody. We're here to talk about some Raider football, and to do that with me are my partners in crime. First is, of course, my good friend and correspondent here with Silver and Black today. Of course, he didn't have a chance to do that this year due to the fact that we had COVID. That, of course, is Chaz Osborne. Chaz is with us. Chaz, how you doing tonight, man?
Hey, doing good. Happy Valentine's, all you Raider lovebirds out there.
Yeah, Raider
lovebirds. This happy hour concept you got going?
Yes, and we're going to get to that in a second. Also joining us is the host of the popular Raiders podcast, Just Pod Baby. That, of course, is Mr. Evan Groat. So we are coast to coast here from Las Vegas back to New York State. Evan, how you doing, man? How's your Sunday going?
Not too bad. Just gearing up for another snowstorm that's supposed to come here tomorrow night. Supposed to get a foot of snow in the next 24 hours. So just getting the snowblower all gassed up and ready to go.
We're getting the sunblower gassed up out here, man. We're just getting sun. Now, we had bad winds the other night. Yesterday.
I saw that.
Right, but other than that. Yeah, but we're getting an early spring. It's starting to warm up here, which is good and bad. We need rain and all that stuff, but we're back here. We're kind of just doing a happy hour Sunday night. We haven't done this in a long time, and I wanted to do it. So we're drinking, right? Chaz, what do you got going out there?
Just Jack and Coke, the old fallback.
Are you going to hold it up so people can see that?
Old Mother Milk.
What do you got? What kind of glass you got? Oh, Raiders, of course.
Raiders glass Scott gave me for Christmas last year.
There you go, see? There you go. Evan, how about you? You drink anything, or you have the high C on tap? What are you doing?
Well, I must have missed the memo about the alcohol. I'm going to look like a big loser here. I'm drinking water.
There you go. Water.
Got a Raider glass.
But I can run upstairs and grab some alcohol if you need me to.
Yeah, you could do that too. And then what I got going, and because Chaz is here, and we were talking about this the other day, is I'm drinking a Boddington's Pub Ale, right? So from the UK, and I'm drinking it in a glass that Chaz and I got at the game in London. When we were there, we did the only live broadcast from Tottenham Stadium in London. We went to a party the night before, and we're able to get some of those glasses, so it was fun. So we're drinking on the job tonight. I don't get to do this on the radio usually, although I guess I could, because we've been doing the show from home because of COVID. I guess I could drink every day if I wanted to.
Just put in a red solo cup. They won't know. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So what we wanted to do today was we wanted to really just focus in on some of the Raiders chatter we're seeing out there, because a lot of you, I mean, it's off season, but there's so many unknowns with the Raiders, so many things that are coming up, and we wanted to kind of touch on those and make sure that we just chat with you. And of course, you can be part of the conversation. I see the chat going crazy already on YouTube, and give a shout out to our man Fabian, Raider27, of course, always calls into the show saying glad back on YouTube. And then, of course, saying Evan and Chaz, quality entertainment. Now, that might be a stretch, but no. Stephen Doherty, I guess, says, Evan, I'm from the Southern Tier, brother. So,
yeah. So he knows he gets a lot of snow down there then.
Yeah. So you guys are getting everything. Bryce out on Periscope / Twitter, which Periscope's going away here too soon. Yes, I'm wearing my Van Halen hat as well. As you can actually see, I'm going to turn to my wall. I'm going to turn my camera. You can see my guitars going over there, my Van Halen stuff. Anyway,
nice.
So
Scott, when you did the Van Halen in high school, Airband, were you Sammy Hagar? Were you Eddie? Were you Alex? I can't remember.
Yeah, so I was Eddie. So Chaz brings up a good point, and this is what this is all about. We're just winging it, but we're going to get to Raider stuff. But when I was in high school in San Diego County, and Evan, you're going to laugh at this because you're a teacher. We had air bands, right? So lip syncing. It was like a competitive sport. seriously. And so
I think
at
our
our height,
one buddy
especially
went to the finals. They made $1,000 on TV, right, on the finals.
Oh yeah. No, when they used to do that show called Putting on the Hits, which was a TV show. This is in the 80s. Some of you guys are too young. You're like, what the hell are these guys talking about? But anyway, so we did, my junior year, we did a Van Halen one. It was the Sammy Hagar version of Van Halen, and I played Van Halen. If you search on YouTube, Carlsbad High School, Van Halen, Air Band, you'll find it, and you can make fun of me. You can make fun of me.
You're kidding.
No, it's there, man. It's out there. It's out there. So you can watch it.
I wear mine's on there. I did Louie, and I had some girls in bikinis, and they told me I couldn't have girls in bikinis, but hey.
I remember.
It's the beach. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, we ended up winning the county, the whole county. We went to SeaWorld. They had a competition at SeaWorld. That's where the finals were. And we did that. And I was dressed. That was a different band. That was the next year we did Billy Joel. And it's hard to explain. You have to go watch it. And I was Elvis in the full jumpsuit. And I had these two blonde twins with me as my dancers, Jill and Janelle,
That's right.
if you remember. So that's fun. That's what we've devolved into. But thanks for everybody for viewing. But we are watching your comments. So we'll get to your questions and stuff. We got questions coming in already, but we'll get to those. But remember, we are drinking. It's Wendy. Hey Chaz, Wendy says hello. She's in the chat there.
Hey, I love
what?
Wendy.
Yeah.
Miss her.
So
Tell
we're
her I
doing
miss
that.
her.
Well, there we go. She heard you. All right. So we're going to talk Raiders, but
it's not bad.
no, we're drinking on the job, so it's just we're going to wing it and have fun. But guys, let's start in. I got a list of stuff. I want to start with something, especially since I know Evan and I are on opposite ends on this subject, which is great. No, I mean, and there's arguments on both sides. That's why we want to talk about it. Number one is, of course, we heard this week that J.J. Watt released by the Texans as the Texans completely continue to just implode in every possible way. And so J.J. Watt, 128 starts there with the Texans. Of course, he was a three-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's not the generational player he used to be, but he's still very disruptive in the middle of a defense and is also, I think, a kind of veteran leadership that the Raiders could use. Now, let me say this with a caveat. I would like to see them sign J.J. Watt. I don't know. I think it's going to be too competitive. I think he's going to go somewhere like Green Bay that is closer to a championship style club. I don't think the Raiders are quite there yet, but I don't think that the Raiders shouldn't do the old college try, because even though they aren't a contender yet, I do believe that he would be a great addition to a defense, frankly, that does not need to get younger. That's the other thing I hear about from people is that, well, no, we don't need a bunch of old guys. And while I agree with that, I will tell you that he's not that old. He still has a lot left to take. He's not Jason Witten, I'll put it that way. But Evan, I know that you have a different point of view on this. Tell me why you don't like the thought of the Raiders making a play for J.J. Watt.
Well, I mean, you mentioned he still has some good years left in the tank, I think. But when you consider a couple of things, like you mentioned, the costs, what it's going to cost to get a player like him to come over to the Raiders, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in his, acquiring his talents. I think that the price is going to get just too much for the Raiders. And I do think his better years are behind him. Not to say that he doesn't have something left to offer, but I just think I think the Raiders should be looking at some guys who are right now just getting to the prime of their career. And I got a couple names for you, actually. And some people might look at me and kind of scratch their head and say, really, those are the guys you're thinking about? But I was doing a little bit of research on this before we came on the air, and there's not a ton of great names out there as far as defensive ends go. I mean, you have Leonard Williams, who's the premier name. Will he reach free agency? We don't really know. And then you got J.J. Watt. Those are going to be two of the more costly guys out there. There's two other names out there that I'm going to keep a close eye on. Number one is Trey Hendrickson from the Saints. Kind of a one-hit wonder this year, kind of came out of nowhere with 13.5 sacks. But he's a guy who's 26, again, just getting to his prime, won't cost you the same kind of money as a J.J. Watt or a Leonard Williams. And he played in, let me just check my notes, I think he played in only 538 snaps, something along those lines. He didn't play in many snaps at all. 558 snaps, 53% of the snaps this season, and he still was able to get 13.5 sacks. The other name on my list is Carl Lawson with the Bengals. He's 25 years old. Again, another part-time player, did not play a whole lot. I don't have the number of snaps for him written down here, but led the NFL in quarterback knockdowns with 27, 44 quarterback pressures, which was 5th in the NFL. So I look at a couple guys like that, and I just think there might be a little bit more upside to those two guys with the time that they have left in their career. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and that's a good point of view, and it's an interesting point of view too, because I think that, yes, obviously if you can get more out of somebody longer term and they're going to be in the silver and black for longer term, makes a lot of sense. Chaz, when you look at this and you look at J.J. Watt, there's so many great things that he brings, but then there's also, to the point that Evan makes, you're looking at a guy who's going to be there for a year or two, and then you're going to be looking for maybe somebody to come in at a younger age and a different part of their career to really fill that spot. What do you think of J.J. Watt? Would you make a play for him? What are the pluses and minuses from your perspective?
Okay, so when I look at things, I look at it as a fan, I kind of look at it as a general manager, right? Because you want to see both sides of it. Of course, as a fan, you want all the best players you can get. You want to stockpile as much talent as you can get and just kind of trim the fat from there. As a general manager, you brought a great name, Jason Witten, and I know most of the fans are kind of up in arms about the Jay Witten bringing him in, but the thing that Jason Witten does that us, fans don't get to see, but lucky for us, the media, we get a little peek into the locker room. Him, what he did for Darren Waller and what he will have done for Darren Waller's career going forward is just, huge. No question. We weren't bringing Jason Witten in to put us over the top because we thought we were headed to the playoffs. I think that's more why we brought Mariota and for a little bit of insurance in case we didn't make a quarterback. We were going to playoff, correct? So we were trying to bolster that position. So you bring in J.J. Watt, and I think that really helps the young, Max Crosby and the line. They see his work ethic. See, he's been there. He's been to the playoffs. He knows what he's doing. So from a fan's perspective, yes. From a GM's perspective, I would want it, but it would done J.J. Watt because we don't know what his ask price is. He wants to come to a team. I don't think in this point of his career now, his tank isn't on empty. I think his lights on yet for the refuel. He's somewhere at a quarter tank, right? He's still got a little bit left. If I'm J.J. Watt, I'm going somewhere that's going to contend. I'm going to Green Bay. I'm going to the Rams. I don't think he's going to do the Kevin Durant where he goes to Kansas City and have a bank of coattails championship. But those are one. I saw he was being recruited by the Bills. I think he goes somewhere where right on the doorstep. And he can be a third down specialist. He wasn't so great against the rush. Are you getting me now?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of hiccups. As Rena Raider says, your connection sucks. But I think maybe your internet is drinking out of your rum and your Jack and Coke. I don't know why it's hiccuping a little bit, Chaz. We got most of what you said though, man. So we're good there. But I think that's part of the reason. And I'm seeing some of the comments like, well, he's not going to come here because he's he wants to be on a contender, and that I agree with. But I think though that if you look at it, the reasoning, I think Evan and your reasoning as far as finding somebody who's a veteran but has more upside and probably be with the team longer makes a lot of sense. And I think is the argument. I think the argument about not having money, not having enough money and all that stuff, and not having the contender and all that, those are certainly issues too. Although I think the money thing is a little bit blown up. I mean, he was going to make $17.5 million in Houston coming up before he was cut, obviously, and released by the Texans. But that he's not going to get that on the open market, especially with the way the salary cap is going down. So if you look at what they're going to do, I mean, he's probably going to be in the $12 to $14 million range. My whole thing with him and wanting the Raiders to at least consider it was the fact that that veteran presence, the gravitas he brings into that locker room. To me, you can get that with a younger version of that. But like you said, Evan, I don't see a lot in the market. I mean, yeah, Leonard Williams in the middle sounds great, and that's fine. But I just don't see a big market out there, which to me is concerning for this team because there's also not a huge market for drop-dead, just perfect, good defensive ends in the draft either. And so the Raiders have, I think, a big problem on defense. And I like to think that they're close to being a playoff team, but then I look at all the work that they have to be on defense, and it's a tough problem they have to learn how to solve. It might have to come in some sort of trade.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right. And just one other thing, I do think they should maybe go for a guy that wouldn't cost so much. I mentioned Trey Hendrickson and Carl Lawson, but absolutely they would not bring that leadership quality that J.J. Watt has. And I do think the team needs that. They need not only somebody that can come in and make an immediate impact, but they do need some of that veteran leadership there. And Watt does fit both of those needs. But I just don't see it happening. I really don't. And you talk about the draft class this year. There's a lot of guys who are talented, but they're kind of viewed as projects. Gregory Rousseau, Kwity Paye, Azim Ojulari. These are guys who look talented right now, but will they ever reach that ceiling is the big question mark with those guys. So a trade is another option. I don't really know what defensive ends are kind of being dangled right now. So you make a great point there. It's like, it's a big problem for the Raiders because who are they going to get to fill that spot?
Yeah. Not only that, guys, but it's a situation where they have needs elsewhere too. I mean, you have needs on the inside, you have needs on the edge, you have needs at linebacker still, and you have needs in the defensive backfield, right? So it's not like they just need one big pass rusher and they're cool. They need a lot more than that. Yeah. And I think that to get a pass rusher would be great, Chaz, but you still need that push on the inside, or that guy on the edge isn't going to have the opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We've been talking about this ever since the show's been on air, right? Every year it's the defense is just driving us crazy. There is one name I can guarantee that will be there next year, Richard Sherman. And I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear Richard Sherman, but you got his connection with Gus Bradley, and he's the same reason that you brought in Jason Witten. He's gonna show these young Arnett and those guys how to play the game right. He's been to the top of the mountain, and he's gonna show them that work ethic on and off the field. So Richard Sherman, a nice, we're gonna get him cheap, $4 million, $3 million, something like that.
Yeah. And that's interesting too.
Again? God dang it.
Yeah, you're hiccuping a lot, Chaz. I'm not sure why.
Reset something to the computer. Let's try and go to the computer.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna boot
Resend
Chaz
it to the email.
He's gonna come back in just a minute. So we'll take Chaz out. It'll be Evan and I until we can get that worked out. Richard Sherman's a good one though. Evan, let's talk about it. How old is Sherman? How many years does he
33.
have? He's 33 years old.
33 years old.
And it's one of those deals where when I see people talk about Richard Sherman and say that, well, he's too old, he's this. Listen, you look at PFF's cornerback ranking since 2019, he has the highest ranking.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that Richard Sherman's the guy long-term back there, but as a guy to come in for a year or two with that lineup in the back there where you have Trayvon Mullen, you have Damon Arnett, you have Jonathan Abram, all three of who need some seasoning and need some maturity. A guy like Richard Sherman, you're not losing a ton with him playing. I'm not saying he's the best cornerback there is right now at his age, but he certainly has not lost it all. It's not like he is some reclamation project who can't play anymore. I think this guy brings so much to the lineup and to the locker room, Evan. I would consider him, but again, he's going to be another guy who's going to be in demand. So it all really depends where he wants to go.
Yeah, and it all comes down to money as well, because we know money's going to be a big issue for the Raiders, especially when they give you the number of what the cap is going to be next season. But the one thing I will say about Sherman, I'm not a huge fan of bringing him in either, but at least he has the experience in Gus Bradley's system, and that could be what he could do as a mentor, as a teacher back there for all these young guys trying to learn this new system. That could be really huge, even more important than what Watt could bring to that young defensive line, I think, because Sherman has experience in that style of defense. So that would be one thing that would be hard for me to argue against bringing in a guy like Sherman. But I do wonder, how much does he have left in the tank? I mean, 33, he's had some injuries here. I think he only played in 5 games last year. So that would be a big question for me.
Yeah, but I think though, I mean, Evan, if I look at it from the perspective of how much does he have left, Look, it doesn't mean that you don't go out and you don't get some younger players. But I do think, though, that just having him back there, I mean, is he a better option than some of the players they have on the roster right now at number 2 or number 3 from a cornerback position? I mean, we look at LaMarcus Joyner. He's most likely going to be gone, right? You look at the cap hit. I got the numbers here in front of me. They already saved $11.6 million releasing Tyrell Williams. If they cut Trent Brown, which is not a given, by the way, if they cut Trent Brown, that is another $14 million. If they can trade Marcus Mariota, and we're going to talk about Marcus Mariota in a few minutes, that's another $10 million. You could restructure Derek Carr's contract, give him an extension, move some of that $19 million off. Joyner is another 11.2. Incognito 6.3. So there's an opportunity to free up some money to do some interesting things here. I just don't know. To me, there's pressure on this Raiders team, Evan, to make the playoffs in 2021. If they don't, things could get ugly. I really believe that. Even though Gruden's got the long contract and all that, 2 years in your new home, and if you don't make the playoffs, what does that say for talent evaluation from Mike Mayock and John Gruden?
Yeah, we've talked about this before on the radio show, and I agree with you. I mean, and especially because of where they have been mid-season the last 2 years, 6-4 last year, and then 6-3 in 2020 this past season, and to not make the playoffs in either one of those seasons, if they should fail at that again in 2021, like you said, I mean, the fan base is going to be on fire. And you're right, it does say something about the talent evaluation of Mike Mayock. And I was one of the guys who, after that first draft class, I felt really good about Mayock. But then you look at what happened in this last draft class, and there's a lot of question marks there. I mean, I know these guys are still young. You don't evaluate a draft class until at least 3 years. So there's still some time for these guys to develop. But, Mayock's definitely in question as well at this point. I'm not saying get rid of him. Don't get me wrong. I still have confidence in the guy. But when you look at the free agent signings combined with the draft classes, there's still some work to be done here.
Yeah, no doubt. And we have our good friend Fabian who asked, where'd it go? There it was. Can we wait for new guys to get up to speed? Fabian, do you mean the new guys as far as the young players on the roster? Let me know what you mean by that one, because I don't think, I think that the time to wait for people to get up to speed is gone. And if you're going to look at this team, you got to get more out of who you drafted. It's just the bottom line. Listen, and I saw one of our comments talking about, there it is, Raider 27. It's tough drafting corners 3 years before they really figure it out. That's true. So that means, to me, you got to have veterans who can at least kind of steady the waters a little bit while they're there. I'm not saying they're going to be all Pro Bowl type players, but that's why a Richard Sherman or somebody like that, add a Marcus May on the back end at safety, do something to get those guys some help, because Damon Arnett showed some flashes here and there, but he certainly was not ready. Trayvon Mullen, I think, is developing nicely. And I think Trayvon Mullen would be a good, cornerback in this league. He's not your CB1. He's not the guy who's going to dominate the league or anything like that, but he's very, very good. But I just think they need some experience there. That's why when you look at that defense, I'm really concerned, again, Evan, because you have so many needs. And then by the time you get those needs addressed, where's your offense going to be? Yeah. By then, if you wait 2 more years, then you have a 9-10-year veteran at quarterback, Derek Carr, you might start to see skills diminish there. And somebody asked earlier, do we see Derek Carr getting traded? I would say absolutely not. That's not because I don't think they should explore it. I just think if you look at what the Raiders are going to do, what problems they need to solve, what money they have, they're just not going to do it, because if they give up draft capital, if they give up too much, how are they going to build their defense? I mean, the bottom line is you always try to look to get better no matter where it is. If that means trading Derek Carr, then you do it, but I just don't see it happening.
I will say one thing. I do think there will be a natural progression with this defense, just getting better because of the fact that Gus Bradley's the new defensive coordinator. While Paul Guenther was here, I supported him. But as time went on and once he was fired, we heard some of the things that players, former players and current players were saying. It sounded like what he was doing was just way too much for them, too much on their plate. I remember hearing Corey Littleton talk about he felt like a chicken with his head cut off. So I do think having a guy like Gus Bradley come in should help the defense. But, how much was talked about without having the off-season programs. That could be the case again this coming off-season. They very well likely they're not going to have the rookie mini camps and the OTAs, probably not going to have any of that stuff again. So trying to install a new defense this year, that could be another problem that, could arise for this defense. So, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because I do think Gus Bradley is a step up, but the fact that they all have to learn a new defense now could kind of put them behind the eight ball.
Yeah, that is true, although it's a much more simplified defense, and Reno Rader has a good point here, which is it's not as much as people as it is scheme that was confusing the players. And while I agree with you, Reno Rader, I totally agree with you on that one. I do think, though, that there's a difference up front. Up front, they have a lack of talent. They just do. Some of that is scheming. Yeah, will Mo Hurst get better? Will Cleve Farrell get better? Probably. And, of course, you have Max Crosby, but you need somebody else on that end, and you need somebody else that's going to put a push up the middle. That's why I like Leonard Williams so much, whether or not it happens. I just think, though, that it's a combination. Like everything else in life, it's not just one thing. And I just think that you have to look at opportunities to get better. Here's Straight Rate Sports. I don't think it's fair to judge defensive draft picks when you have Paul. Again, yeah, we agree with that. We understand that. Although I think some of the guys up front, absolutely you can judge. Doesn't matter on scheme. I think you can just see whether or not they're able to make a push. Some of that is on scheme, but some of it is not. Like, I don't think Arden Key, I'm sorry, nice guy. I think it's time for that experiment to end. I think Mo Hurst is in a make or break year. I think Cleve Farrell is too. You got to see that big 3-year jump here. I think he made some progress last year as well. But at the same time, as I've been saying all week, Evan, in the NFL, to win, you need offensive line, defensive line, and quarterback, right? And so the Raiders seemingly have that, and we were welcoming Chaz back in. We got you, Chaz. You're back,
Hey,
brother.
can you hear me?
Oh, that's much
Loud and
better.
clear?
There we go. All right, we're back. So I think it's a combination of that. And Fabian brings up a good point, and that is linebackers, right? So I consider linebackers part of that of the front seven, right? So with Corey Littleton, I really believe, and I know not everybody does, guys. I believe Corey Littleton will come back. He will be better this year. I think that is a great example that Raider 27 brought up earlier, which was its scheme, right? I think he got lost in that scheme, and it wasn't built for him. Now with Gus Bradley's system, he'll be much more well-suited. Nick Kwiatkowski, a good linebacker, not a great linebacker, not a thumper. He's not going to be a star, but he's there to do a good job. So I think they have a need at linebacker, and I include that in the front seven.
Yeah, and I heard you talk about that a lot this week with the need to add some speed at linebacker. We saw that in the Super Bowl with the Buccaneers linebackers there. Devin White, of course, Raider fans upset that Cleveland Farrell was the pick and at number 4 and not Devin White. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to adding some more speed at linebacker as well. It's been something I've been wanting for years, and it just hasn't happened. I remember wanting Roquan Smith when he was coming out of Georgia. I love Devin White. Just hasn't happened. The next guy I love is the kid out of Notre Dame, Jeremiah Koromoa. I love him.
Aswu Koromoa.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him Joke. J-O-K. That's what they told me to call him. So
and not just because I'm a big Notre Dame fan,
yeah,
but to me he would be a great selection for the Raiders at 17 because he's the kind of modern prototypical linebacker you need that can go sideline to side. He has the speed and he can thump. And I think that's going to be the type of thing. Anthony talks about Muse. Don't get me started on Tanner Muse. I think it was the worst. It was the worst pick ever.
Yeah.
Nice kid and all, and I hope he's a great special teams player. But I'm sorry, he's not going to be Justin Simmons or anybody like that. It's just not going to happen. That's my opinion. I'm not afraid to say it. Chaz, when you look at this though, and you look at the fact that this team now has to go out and scout for the draft. Chaz, if you guys don't know, if you're new, because we haven't been as very active in video as we went to a daily show as we have been in the past, but Chaz was a longtime scout with the Lakers, so NBA basketball, but he's a scout. He spent time on the road. He evaluated talent for drafts and all that stuff. With all that happened with COVID, with no combine this year, how difficult is it going to make it for the Raiders to evaluate this defensive talent that they need so much?
Yeah, and there was less games, right? Usually scouting, when I'm kind of putting together my final analysis, I would say 50-60% of it is that regular season, what you saw. You want to base most of it on their full body of work, and then you've got a little bit of like the combine. You put that in private workouts, the pro days, and things like that. And then this year was cut short, so you get the one thing I really liked was doing the interviews. You really want to find out if this guy, if athletic glory is what this guy wants. Does he just want to get a paycheck and then go be a rapper, or does he want to be the greatest player at his position of all time? You see Charles Woodson getting inducted this week, and you're thinking, that's the guy we want. So you put a little bit of that, the medicals. You talk to the teammates, you talk to the assistant coaches. You check their social media account. There's so many other things you can do since you weren't able to see them, only a small sample size on the field this year. And I know a lot of guys didn't play, right? I think a lot of guys that are coming out this year
opted out,
didn't even play. So it's going to make it even more difficult. So they're really going to have to do their homework this year. To find something. And I know there's been a lot said about this year's draft class and Mike Mayock. They didn't do such a great job because last year's was so great. But there was a lot of injuries this year, right? So I'm going to just chalk it up to I'm not giving them an F at all. We'll give them a C or a B grade for now and wait for these players, because you can't grade anything after 1 year anyway.
No, yeah, that's true. I listen, with this draft class, Chaz, I gave them an incomplete because I just don't think you have enough information to see. I mean, again, as I said, and I don't, people can disagree. I don't care. Tanner Muse was not a good pick. Obviously, Lynn Bowden Jr. was not a good pick. They got rid of him already. So you got two players that were taken in the first 3 rounds that didn't pan out. And I still like Henry Ruggs. I think he's got to get better. They got to use him more. But certainly the draft class to me is incomplete. But I think there's 2 stinkers on there. Obviously, they traded one of the guys away, and Tanner Muse, I just don't see it. And Damon Arnett was drafted too early. There were other players that you could have taken in that thing as well. Not that I don't think Damon Arnett shows some ability to get out there and do and could be a good player. But here's a guy who quit in college. He had all kinds of injury issues in college. He continues to have them in the pros. And so he's going to have to find the maturity and find it quick, or that could get ugly pretty quickly, in my view, Evan.
Yeah, and I talking about Arnett, I mean, wasn't maturity one of the things that was kind of a knock on him coming out? So the fact that now we're hearing about it once again, now that he's in the league, that's concerning. So I wasn't thrilled about the pick at the time. Not so much about the player, but it was just about where he was picked. Like you said, a little bit too early. I thought maybe he could have been had a little bit later on in the draft, maybe in a trade down scenario. That didn't happen. But long way to go. Long way to go.
Yeah, there's a long way to go. And certainly there's a lot to discuss there too. But when we look at other options for the Raiders too, you mentioned a couple. We talked about Leonard Williams, Ndamukong Suh, right? There's another guy you could consider. And a lot of Raider fans I've been hearing talking about Shaq Barrett. The problem for me with Shaq Barrett, guys, is Shaq Barrett primarily played in a classic 3-4, and I just don't see him fitting in the scheme that Gus Bradley's going to have here.
Go ahead, Evan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And we talked about money. I mean, he's going to earn himself a big contract. I mean, I believe he was franchise tagged last year, coming off another great year and a Super Bowl run. So his price is going to be inflated because of that. Played well in the Super Bowl. I just don't, again, it's going to come down to money, and I don't really know how much the Raiders are going to have when it's all said and done, unless they are able to free up some of that money, like you said. But I think he's going to be a little bit too pricey. I don't know if they're going to be able to make a huge splash with any of these big guys. I thought originally maybe they could, but I think, as I said earlier, I think they're going to be better off trying to go maybe the cheaper route with some of these guys who have some upside.
Yeah, and I think
a lot of teams are going to be handcuffed. I think you're going to see that with all teams across the board with the salary cap actually going down. This is the first time I think maybe ever that it actually went down. I know that it's probably stayed even a couple of times. So every team's really going to have that challenge of reworking things and trying to get rid of this piece to get that piece. So it's not only the Raiders' problem, it's a league-wide problem.
Yeah, some of the other names, of course, Yannick Ngakoue, which we talked about last year. But I think to me, he's only good if you already have that push up the middle and you just need somebody to come off the edge and do one thing. A guy that's intriguing to a lot of people that I don't hear a lot about because he's not one of those sexy names. Many think that his best days are behind him, and he's had some injury issues, is Melvin Ingram, the third from the Chargers, who knows Gus Bradley. They're very close. That could be a guy. That could be a sneaky good hire that you bring in, especially if signing, I should say, not hire. If you're able to get some stud in the draft like Barrymore or somebody like that from Alabama in the middle, right? So where you get that pressure in the middle, and helps free up Furl, who plays in the middle as well too and can go outside as well. and bring in a guy like that. Again, that's not going to cost you a ton of money, but he's got gas left in the tank too, I think, Evan, and that might be one of the options that the Raiders look at as a short-term solution.
Yeah, I would be probably more in favor of that than a guy like Watt. And I know it's not about, obviously Watt has more talent right now, but I think Ingram still has something left to prove, and you can get him at a much cheaper rate. Also has experience within the defense. So I just think these top name players, Watt, Leonard Williams, should he hit the market, because the position isn't real deep as far as free agency. Those guys they're going to get huge contracts, and the Raiders and other teams are, like Chaz said, everyone's going to kind of be in the same boat. You got to find those bargain bin guys, and Melvin Ingram could be one of those guys.
Right.
Yeah,
well, not only that, I guarantee that Gus Bradley will definitely bring over a Charger. Be it Melvin Ingram or somebody else a little lesser known. That's why I know for sure they're getting Richard Sherman, because he's an old Gus Bradley guy. He knows the system. Whenever you get a new coach, you always want a couple of guys like that can kind of be coaches on the field. These players really help all the other players get up to speed with his system that much faster. So I guarantee they'll get Charger there and Richard Sherman for sure.
Yeah, SL Raider, Richard Sherman, Melvin Ingram, John Johnson III, trade Mariota for Ladonis, and draft Barmore. Yeah, no, hey, look, those are all suggestions kind of, I think, in line with a lot of what we're talking about. And certainly that will be the case. We're going to talk, by the way, we're coming, just so you know what we're going to talk about on the show. We're going through this, talking about the defense, talking about opportunities here. But in just a few minutes here, we're going to switch to the Marcus Mariota trade value. I know Corey Sanford, one of our first and longtime listeners and viewers, has been asking us that. His wife's giving him crap, though, because it's Valentine's Day and he's watching Raider content on YouTube. But we got you, Corey. But that's the thing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with COVID. Here's one from Straight Right Sports. With COVID, no offseason, new stadium, new training facility, blah blah. Teams still went 8-8. But there's still a silver lining. Yeah, I agree with you, Straight Right, but at the same time, they could have lost 2 of those games too. They could have easily been 6-10 or 7-9. The Jets game comes to mind, of course, off the top of the head.
And no team had an off season. The off season stuff for me is like, you saw Justin Herbert. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was playing the most difficult position in the game. Came in with no rookie OTAs, minicamp, none of that, and still played phenomenal. So I'm kind of over the whole, they didn't have an off season. Nobody did. So yeah, and that's not to say to SL Raiders' point, or Straight Right, I think it was. It's not to say, to your point, that you shouldn't look for positives. I agree. If you listen to our radio show every day and you read our website, we're not overly negative. We're not a fan site. We don't go crazy when they lose, and we don't go nuts when they win, like they're going to win the Super Bowl. We kind of keep it in the middle. So I think they certainly are in a position where they can make some moves. But I am concerned. I really am concerned with the defense, because I've not seen John Gruden do anything to really improve that defense in the time he's been here. I mean, let's face it, he left the coaching place too long, and that's a concern. So I'm not being negative. I'm not saying he can't, but he's got a lot to prove, Chaz. If he's going to go out and improve this defense, you've got to do it this year. I don't think you can wait a year or 2 more.
Well, he's never been a defensive guy, right? He's supposed to be that offensive genius. I don't know if he's an innovator who maybe his time's passed, or is he a motivator? Is he a teacher? I've got some questions about John Gruden myself. I'm a Raider fan, and I want the best for this team. And so he's got the long contract, so he's supposed to be putting it together. And I just saw the thing that said we could have easily been 6 or 10 or 10-6. I didn't really want to go to the playoffs because I didn't want to get smoked in that first game. I didn't want our defense to get, I didn't want it to show how bad the defense was on national TV in front of everybody. So last year or this year, we were 32nd. Last year, 24th. The year before, 30th. So the defense, you can't be in the bottom third of the league and defense and expect to make it to the playoffs ever.
No, and Philip Hurl, our viewer on YouTube, says, I disagree. They've drafted heavily on defense and signed a lot of free agents. Yeah. But not well. I mean, I can take a ton of players, and if they don't play well, if they don't make instant impact. And I know the cornerback position's tough. They went heavy on cornerback, on safety. Jonathan Abram hasn't lived up to his billing yet. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying he hasn't yet. He's had trouble staying on the field and on all those issues. So that's it. But I did see, and I want to scroll back in the comments here because we had a great one too. And I'm just going to diverge a little bit before we get to the Mariota conversation. None incognito. Who's going to play offensive guard in 2021 is my worry. And Evan, I'm going to come to you on this one because I've been saying this on the radio every day too, which is everybody says, oh, the offense is fine. They don't need anything. And I understand that when you're talking about quarterback and some other positions. But that offensive line is in a precarious position right now because if you cut Trent Brown, if Richie Incognito's gone and doesn't come back, those are two guys. Now, I know they weren't all on the field at the same time, but still, that offensive line needs work. That's why I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised, and we'll have to have Kelly Kreiner, who's on, I think, watching us on Periscope, or he was on soon to talk about this because the offensive tackle class in the draft isn't great either. And so the Raiders might have to do that in the first round even, depending on what happens where everybody falls, because there's multiple issues here. I think people think that this offense, well, it was a top 10 offense. Yeah, last year. Okay, now you have to look at it from the perspective of, do you have depth? Do you have guys to replace those? That's why in my mind, as much as it kind of pains me in one side, they might end up keeping Trent Brown. I really believe that.
Yeah. I think they will, and I hope they do, because here we are talking about all these problems on defense. Well, in order to fix some of those problems, you need to have money. Well, guess what? They don't have a lot of money right now, and if they want to free up some money, then they're going to have to cut guys like Trent Brown, which creates another hole. And some people will say, well, there was a hole there all season. Yes, there was. I understand what you're saying, but if you can get Trent Brown back and you can get him healthy and to play, he's well worth $14 million. You talk about left guard with Richie Incognito. I mean, they do have a young John Simpson who could slide in and take his place. How well will he play? Do they bring back Denzel Good? Those are two names that would most likely compete for that job. And then another spot, wide receiver. What's going to happen with Nelson Aguilar? We still don't know if they're going to bring him back or not. So if he's not back with the team, that creates another hole with your wide receiver one. Is Ruggs or Brian Edwards ready to step up into that role? So there are a lot of question marks with this team right now, as you mentioned. And obviously, a lot of the big ones are on defense, but if they do free up some money, that could make voids on the offense. So there's a lot going on with this team right now.
Well, it's hard to find that balance, right? You put so much focus on the defense, and all of a sudden you start getting about the offense. And one thing I wanted to talk about, I'm sure you've been talking about it a lot on the radio, is I really thought they underutilized Henry Ruggs.
Thank you. Yes.
I don't know what was going on there, but for some reason they just didn't go to him. I don't know. Maybe he didn't have that connection with Derek Carr. Maybe they just didn't build that trust in the offseason. But, you brought up the wide receivers now. Nelson Aguilar, I thought he was great. He's been to the Super Bowl, another player that knows what it takes to get there. He had that little flip in the locker room at the end of the season, and they kind of made a big deal about it. But, that's mostly because he cares, and he sees the potential in this team, and he knows they've got talent enough to get to the playoffs, and he's trying to get everybody up to that level. And, I think Juju Smith-Schuster's kind of been talked about a little bit, and I just don't. I love Juju Smith. I know. I think Scott, you don't as much. I think he's a great receiver. Borderline number one. But he seems to be Johnny on the spot. I always see him when the fumble. He's the first guy down and pick it up. He just does those intangibles. But for some reason, these Steelers players, like if it's just Al Davis from above, he just does not want. You think about Martavius Bryant, you think about Antonio Brown. Like,
that's
you just
true.
Can't have Steelers on the team for some reason. Yeah. Al Davis won't allow it.
Well, and here's the thing. And by the way, our colleague Kelly Kreiner, our draft expert, did chime in on the class. I'm going to show that comment. Tackle class is deep, offensive tackle, but not with top end talent. Meaning that for role playing guys, for backup guys, or potential maybe development into starters, they're there, just not at the top of the draft. So thank you for Kelly. He'd come on with us, but he's out running around town doing something. He's probably up to no good. But nonetheless, just kidding, Kelly.
It's definitely up to no good.
But I think you're right. I think there's so many needs. I think people don't look at certain needs as needs, but in the NFL, and Chaz, I want you to talk about this too, because being an NBA scout for as long as you were with the Lakers, you had to constantly think about depth and filling that bench and having guys ready to go. It was a constant thing. It never stopped, right? I mean, you don't win a championship as the Lakers and just say, oh, we're done. Now we can just sit back and just let these guys play.
Good.
No, you constantly have to fill needs.
No, every day when you come to the office, or well, certain offices, general manager's office and in the war room, we had a board on the side and had the depth chart basically of the team, number 1, number 2, number 3. And now here's the thing with NBA, you only got 15 guys, so it makes it a lot easier. I got so much respect for Mayock and all these other scouts and the NFL and what they're doing, because you're talking about 50, 60. When you're going to draft, I can't even fathom. I've only got to know about 100 players in the NBA as far as the draft's concerned. And Kelly's great at it. He's like an encyclopedia with these players. He can rattle them off from 1 to 300 is crazy. So you're always looking at that depth chart, and the NBA, just like any sport, you can't just say, okay, well, we want to trade Derek Carr for Packer, Aaron Rodgers, and there's so many things that go into it. You can't just, and so even in the NBA, it's hard just swapping like that, and
Yeah.
kind of in the NBA a little bit more, the acrobats are kind of running the circus now, and I know the NFL doesn't ever want that to happen, so they don't want these big names kind of picking up and moving, and you see Tom Brady doing it a little bit. He goes, and you're going to get top tier talent to go with him. That's why when you get the Raiders to this certain point, if they can get to the playoffs and they're right on the cusp, then a guy like J.J. Watt, we're on his radar. Then he says, okay, that is a team that I will consider going to, because my presence will take them to the next level. But until we get to that point, you got to keep working on that depth chart until you get it strong.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to switch gears. Before we do that, just a reminder, I want to thank our sponsors, and that, of course, includes our good friend Sam and Ash, the injury attorneys here in Las Vegas, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Sam and Ash are great if you're in the Las Vegas Valley or in Los Angeles. They have offices in Los Angeles, too. These are good people, man. They are friends of mine. They are not just advertisers, but they are friends of mine. Also, a shout-out to Dr. Jen, Dr. Andrew, Dr. Jen's Ultimate Protein Bars. This is my other favorite, by the way, mint chocolate brownie. And this is great stuff because it's full of protein. It's all natural ingredients made with superfoods like quinoa, spinach, kale, you name it. But it doesn't taste like we're eating Chaz's old shoe. It actually tastes really good. It's phenomenal stuff. So thanks to Dr. Jen's Ultimate Protein Bars.
I take those out on the golf course. I eat one of those,
yeah.
After 9, I have one of those bars. It's perfect. It's a perfect meal right in the middle of your golf game.
Yeah, actually, it's awesome. And Fabian, who it just commented to Dr. Andrew, who comes on this chat as well. There he is. There's Dr. Andrew. Dr. Andrew is a Dr. Jen. You can see the picture in the corner there. There's Dr. Andrew and Dr. Jen, who are phenomenal people. They are members of Raider Nation, obviously, as you can tell from his picture. Season ticket holders out there at the Golden Knights. But yes, amazing. The best protein bar I've ever had.
How many come in one of those boxes? Because I finally did actually look into ordering them. Yeah. But I was curious how many come in the box.
I want to say it's 20.
20? Okay.
I think so. It might be 12. I can't remember. I'm sure Dr. Andrew will tell us here in just a second. But then there's Aiden, their son, too, who's got comments here. So Aiden it's a family affair here with Dr. Jens. Nice. I think we should focus on veteran free agents for our defense in order to build a defensive identity and use the draft for depth on our offense.
Yep.
And
that's
Dr.
it.
Jens
that's exactly it. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Look at Aiden, man. See the young guy coming in and schooling us all, saying, who's this radio host? These radio host podcasts. What the hell do these guys know? I'm 18 and I got to figure it out.
God bless him.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Thanks, Aiden. I appreciate it. Oh, and there's Dr. Jen 12. Saying 12 in a box. And there's Dr. Jen next to her box.
I'm going to place an order then. Stuff.
Yes, so do not forget. And again, I just bring these on because these are my two favorite, the banana and the mint. It's like, I swear, the banana. I don't eat candy anymore. I literally, if I have like a craving for a sweet tooth type thing, I have one of Dr. Jen's bars.
It just makes you feel better than eating a Snickers too. It's so much better. So much better for you.
Absolutely. At my age too, man, you eat one Snickers and it like your belly just grows. So you got to be careful. So that's why I eat Dr. Jen's Ultimate Protein Bars. All right. So what we're going to do now is we are going to switch gears. And what I want to talk about now is another one of the stories that's kind of rolling around Raider Nation right now as they look not only to free up cap space, but also look at the quarterback position. And I keep hitting my desk. I know it's moving. Sorry about that. But Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota has been rumored to be traded soon, or at least on the trading block, with some teams interested. I think it makes a lot of sense. I like Mariota. Obviously, he subbed in for Derek Carr when he had to in that Charger game and did very well. A lot of people would like to see him as a starter. I think that's asinine. But at the same time, I will tell you, to get rid of the salary, for him and to get something in return. The question is, what can you get in return? We have heard guys recently, Washington, our good friend Michael Lombardi from The Athletic, who's a guest on this show frequently, he said that Washington's very interested in him. We're also hearing that there's interest. Mike Reese of ESPN reported the Patriots could also be interested. But is there any question in any of your guys' minds that Marcus Mariota will not be back in the silver and black next year? Evan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't see it anyway. That cap number is just too big right now for this team. I think it's 10 million, I believe, around there if he is brought back.
10.6.
Yeah, that's just too much money right now with the way with the needs that they have in other places. To bring back a backup quarterback at 10.6 just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's a win-win if they could somehow move him in a trade. That would be a great scenario for the Raiders. As far as the compensation goes, I would think anywhere between round 3 and round 5 would be more than fair. I know some people are hoping to maybe get a more of a premium pick, even like a round 2. I just don't see that anyway. So I'd be totally satisfied with a round 3, round 4 pick for him. And then you cut that salary and you can put that towards a player on defense.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I think he's gone for sure. I think, like I said earlier, they brought him in basically because they knew that, or they thought they were getting to the playoffs this year, and he was kind of a little bit of an insurance backup. So I definitely see him gone. But it's a market this year for quarterbacks. So I do think that price will be a little bit higher. I'm thinking like a third rounder. I'd like to see maybe a proven veteran on defense instead. I know Washington definitely. I mean, these guys, they're looking for premium quarterbacks, and there's just not a lot of them out there. But the Patriots are looking. You're not sure with the Bears, the Eagles, San Francisco. I've even heard they're trying to get rid of Jimmy. So there's definitely a market for quarterbacks, and it's kind of a carousel, right? Everybody just kind of switches teams, and you're hoping that a change of scenery is going to do good for one guy and not the other guy. But it's definitely a good market for Mariota. I think we get a third rounder, or hopefully, some kind of a solid defensive player for him.
Yeah, and to me, the issue here, though, and I think people forget about this because you're, from a Raider fan perspective, you're saying to yourself, okay, yeah, let's trade him. Let's get what we can for him, and maybe it's a second, maybe it's a third-round draft pick. That all sounds great. The problem is his contract, guys. Like we said, 10.6, but it hits the salary cap at about 11 because I think there's a roster bonus or something in there. It's a pretty rich contract, and that contract could prevent more teams from inquiring about him because let's face it, you don't know. It's not like he is a starter where you're like, okay, we're bringing this guy in and he is our starter. There's no question. I don't think any of those teams would do that. And so are you willing to pay $11 million against your cap for a guy that that you have confidence could do well for you and you believe maybe he could compete and become your starter, but you're not sure.
Right.
So if I'm Washington, yeah, they might draft somebody too. But my point is now then I'm going to go back to the Raiders and say, okay, listen, we'd like to give you a third round draft pick for the guy, but you're going to have to eat $3 or $4 million of the salary or $5 million, whatever it might be. That's where I'm concerned. So they could end up being stuck. Now, I will say this. I think if Marcus Mariota gets traded, a lot of people think it might happen soon. I don't think so. I think you're going to see this whole quarterback carousel that we've been talking about for weeks with some of the more high-profile names until that subsides and calms down at the start of the new NFL year in mid-March. I don't think he'll get moved because I think teams are going to see what they can do first that's more advantageous to their cap before they decide on somebody like Mariota.
Well, I think two of the teams that we mentioned, the Washington football team being one of them and the Patriots being the other, they don't really have any other options at quarterback right now.
True,
so if they're going to bring in a guy like Mariota, he's probably going to start for that team. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone on either one of those rosters that is more talented than Mariota. And, $10 million in today's, or $11 million, whatever it would cost him in today's NFL is actually a bargain for a starting NFL quarterback who is probably going to be coming in pretty motivated to want to rejuvenate his career. So I see your point, but I do think that teams are still going to be, excited to acquire a guy like Mariota, especially, they saw a small sample size from him this year, but he played really well in that one game where he came in for the Raiders in relief of Derek Carr. So, maybe they're thinking about that upside with him. He's still only 27 years old, so he still has, some time to really rebound from his time in Tennessee.
But Chaz, let me ask you this though. So let me ask you the question though. So I agree with everything just Evan said, especially if you're Washington and you have to get a quarterback. But there's other guys out there that actually probably would be cheaper. And if you're in rebuild mode, is a Tyrod Taylor, is somebody like that. Listen, these aren't guys that I would pick for my team. Yeah, if it's no, I mean there's guys. That's what I'm saying is there's guys out there that you might be able to get below $10 million. And Evan, you're right, $10 million for a starting quarterback in the NFL is cheap. But for a guy that's had some issues and some baggage, do you go that route, Chaz, or could it be that hey, somebody like a Tyrod Taylor, if I'm Washington and I'm rebuilding, I might be more apt to just say, well, let's pay for this guy. We're going to draft somebody, a young quarterback again, and try to develop them. And until we do that, we'll get the cheapest option we can.
It depends on if you're a GM, you're trying to save your job, right? I mean, coaches and GMs, they just don't want to get fired. If you draft a young player, then that should give you a couple extra years to develop him and start a winning program there. I mean, what's our options this year? Darnold, Trubisky, Fitzmagic. When you talk about Mariota, it's kind of like that movie trailer, right? You see the trailer of the movie and you're like, hey, that movie looks pretty good. Then you get to the theater and you're like, oh man, I got fooled by the movie trailer, That's what that's what other teams are looking at with Mariota. Of course he comes in, just like any other reliever off the bench, and they play good for that one game. And hey, as a Raider fan, I want to tell everybody that Mariota's the greatest and I don't want to get rid of him. That's going to drive the price up, right? So yeah. Looking around, there's not a lot of options this year. If I'm a quarterback, I want to go to Washington. I mean, they made it to the playoffs with no quarterback this season. That's an incredible team over there. Right? That's the same thing Tom Brady did last year when he looked around and he said, wait a minute, this team was good with a quarterback throwing 30 interceptions. Like that's if I'm a guy, I want to go to Washington. That's probably my number one location this year. Now, off-field issues and naming whatever other things they've got going on, that's something else. Not as bad as what's going on down in Texas, but with the quarterbacks this year, what do you do? I mean, they're giving up on Tua already. I mean, no, you can't judge a guy after one season. You saw Josh Rosen get traded and he's gone. Dwayne Haskins. I mean, where does it end? Like, where do you just say, okay, we got to have patience. We're going to develop these guys. It's a win now league, and it's I've got stories. I got a close personal friend that was in the circle with one of your favorites back in San Diego. What was the quarterback that was drafted? I can't remember his name.
Ryan
Leaf. And, hurt his wrist that first season. And, they just shot him up. They gave him pain pills. Now he can't even move. He puts his wrist up and it pops out of place. They just put him right back into the fire and said, we've got to play. We've got to win now, And I'm more of holding a clipboard for a season. Let these guys develop into something good, Let them kind of see the speed of the game before they get run out there. You saw with Mahomes now. Obviously, Mahomes was getting a great talent already, but he sat with a clipboard for a season, and I really think that helps helps them along the way a lot faster.
Well, but here's the thing, Chaz, and I talked about that this week too on the radio show, which is the quarterback position in the NFL is changing, not just in the play, like you mentioned, Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson and these guys who are all very good quarterbacks, and they use their legs a lot more than, let's say, going back 20 years ago when we had more pure pocket passers. But quarterbacks are becoming much more of a commodity. No longer, I mean, like I said, I could name maybe 5 quarterbacks where you think about, okay, these guys are going to be with that team forever. But that is changing. Right now, you're starting to see in the NFL, and you mentioned the Josh Rosen thing. You mentioned Tua now in Miami. If they could get Deshaun Watson tomorrow in the right trade, Tua's gone. So it goes to show you that even with quarterbacks now, as much of the fact that the league is driven by quarterbacks, if teams feel they can get better with a different quarterback, it doesn't matter how good the guy is, unless it's somebody who's already proven that they're so good. And you know what? They gave Mahomes that big deal in Kansas City, but let me tell you, let 3 losing seasons happen and he doesn't perform well, and suddenly that deal doesn't look so good. So it's really interesting to see how even quarterbacks, at the same time, you see what happened with Russell Wilson in Seattle. We're starting to see some of what you saw in the NBA as a scout, Chaz, where players are taking more control, and Russell Wilson's like, hey, I want you to do something about my offensive line because I'm getting sacked more than anybody in the NFL, and so I'm gonna tell you, hey, I'm unhappy and I'd like to leave unless you change it. And so I think the dynamics too, Evan, in the NFL are changing, And what was once considered sacrilege, like trading a quarterback who won you a Super Bowl or at least got you to a point where you were close in contention with champion, that day is gone.
Yeah, and what about on the topic, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, right? I mean, they were from the I was just looking it up, 2016 draft class. That was only 4 years ago. Goff has been to a Super Bowl. Wentz was playing at an MVP caliber the year that the Eagles went to the Super Bowl where he was injured. And I know their play has fell off. I understand that. But how quickly – like they're just willing to give up on those guys and just turn the page and go in another totally different direction. So you're right. These teams are just becoming more impatient with the quarterback, especially. I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint why they're doing that. Maybe they just feel like, right. Yeah. Instant gratification. And that's kind of what's going on with the Raiders, I guess. That's probably why, the fan base is, half of the fan base is ready to move on from Derek Carr and half of the fan base isn't. It's because they just haven't seen enough winning, I guess, playoff appearances and more wins.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. And to me, that's where it's changing. The league's changing. And yeah, while I agree with if you can trade Marcus Mariota and have a situation where you can get some good return on it, you absolutely do it because you got to free up that space. But I also saw one of our thanks Raider Homer, my man Raider Homer, with the Van Halen hat. I see, thank you, man. But somebody brought up the fact that are you comfortable with Peterman as your number 2 quarterback? So if Derek Carr gets hurt, so now the Raiders need to figure out. Now I think they'll bring somebody else in anyway that's going to come off a deal somewhere and be cheaper. So to me, that's one of those things that.
Now here we are talking about the offensive line and how the offensive line is a question mark going into next year, and we lose our best backup. Maybe the second best backup quarterback in the league. It's just one of those things. You're always trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and it's frustrating.
Yeah,
winning cures everything.
No, that's true too. But the question becomes is how are you going to construct this roster? Because I think the bottom line here is that the Raiders this next season have to get production from the draft. They had 2 huge draft classes, and they have not seen enough production from them yet. Doesn't mean they won't. Again, I'm not passing judgment on them yet, but they've got to. If they don't get production out of those 2 draft classes, the 19 and 20 classes. Next year, they're going to be in serious trouble, I think.
Yeah, and the problem with that is these last 2 draft classes, they've had 5 first-round draft picks. I would, when that trade for Khalil Mack first went down, I thought, man, 5 first-round draft picks, they're going to get things turned around a lot quicker, and it just hasn't happened. And I think part of that problem is they've missed. Well, I shouldn't say miss again because they need time. It's only been 2 years and 1 year for this past class, but just has not gotten enough from that class outside of Josh Jacobs. So that has been part of the reason why I think it's maybe taken a little bit longer to get to where the fan base would like it to be.
Yeah.
Right. I'm right there with you. Once we got those draft picks, I thought, man, that's because my mentality is a little bit more NBA, right? And you're thinking first rounders, like, there you go. Just crushed it. You're dominating for the next 15 years, but it's not as easy in the NFL. And, we used to say in the NBA, it takes about 4 or 5 years for a guy to really reach his talent level, his potential. And, I'm not quite sure. You get guys that come in right out of the gate and they just, they do it. But hopefully we see this progression in the next couple of years and they get this, to where we need to be. And they should. I do see them all trending in the right direction. Injuries this year were a big problem. That's going to happen every season. So let's just put it on hold, like you said, an incomplete grade, and we got to hope for the best.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think though too, there's you brought up Josh Jacobs, right? Which he's got to stay on the field, which means I think you need another running back. You need a good, solid running back, which if I'm the Raiders, I actually address later in the draft. You could always get a good runner, I think, somewhere down the line. And running backs, remember, they don't last long in the NFL. So Josh Jacobs isn't going to play for 12 years. It's just, I hate to say that, but it's just, I'm going statistically, and to me, I just don't see it happening. So you're going to have to look at that. So again, there it is. Like you said, Chaz, you have all these moving parts, and they're constantly moving. There's never a time when you can't look at every position on the team and figure out what you're going to do if case A, B, and C it happens. It's just not going to.
Especially at running. Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but especially at running back too, because their shelf life is so short. Jacobs is going to want to be paid in a couple of years when that contract is up. So it's always good to kind of stay ahead of the ball when it comes to running back. Always having a guy there in the waiting who could potentially be your starter if for some reason they decide not to pay Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I mean, a couple years down the road, but just something, draft a young guy now, start to develop him so that in 2 or 3 years he's good to go.
Right. And, we might see Brian Edwards. We might see a lot of these draft, these guys can come out of nowhere and just start clicking.
Right.
It takes a little longer sometimes than others.
Yeah, you're going to need that, right? So we'll see how it all happens, but so I mean that kind of closes the book on the Mariota discussion. But listen, I think there's a lot of things that are going on. I mean, I still think we talked about Ruggs earlier. Yes, Ruggs has to improve. There's no question some of what happened was on the player, but I also think some of it's on the coach and the quarterback, more the coach than the quarterback, because you have to get him involved. You have to if you have a guy there, if you draft somebody 12 overall and they get less receptions than some of your other players on the team, that's your problem. That's not all his problem, because I watch the film, I see where his deficiencies are in route running and where he's got to get better and where he's got to get more physical. That's true, but plenty of times he was open. Also, again, it's how you use him. Henry Ruggs is not just a vertical pass target. He's a guy who runs a lot of slants, a lot of patterns over the middle. That's what he did at Alabama, and the Raiders didn't do that with him. So I think you have to do that. You also have Fabian too, which is true. Our colleague on our show who appears on our Monday show during the season, Hunter Renfro, also didn't get as many targets. And Hunter would say, that's okay, man. As long as we win the game, I don't care who gets a target. And he's right. But you have these weapons, and for whatever reason, there was a comfort level between, obviously, Darren Waller. There's got to be a comfort level because the guy's ungodly good. But with Nelson Aguilar, the same thing. He got open, Carr and him got in a connection. There was never a connection with Henry Ruggs. That's something they got to address, because that was the number 12 overall pick in the draft. Mike Mayock, the only thing I had a problem with Mike Mayock and what he said was that he said, well, Ruggs was everything we knew he was. We knew exactly what he was. And I'm thinking to myself, if you knew he was a developmental wide receiver, is that what you're claiming? Then why the hell did you take him number 12? That's a terrible pick by you.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about that when you guys were talking about Ruggs. Whether it was on the coaching or on the quarterback, as far as what happened with Ruggs, to me, it's on the play caller and it's on the position coach, because when your general manager comes out and says, well, he was exactly who we thought he was. We knew he had to get better and this and that. And he didn't improve all season long. Well, that's on your coaching, because you're bringing in a guy and you're saying, man, if we can coach him up and get him to where we think he can be, that didn't happen in year one. I mean, I know that there's a long ways to go in his career, but in year one, it did not happen. So that's a big time failure on the coaching part of things, because you've already said, well, we knew he was going to be raw coming in. So to me, it's on the coach, and they got to do a better job of getting Henry Ruggs ready for year number 2.
Yeah.
And Corey,
they will.
Corey
will come around.
They need to. I was going to say, sorry, Chaz. Corey said, because Gruden wanted his own Tyreek Hill. Remember, this is the guy they said was their Tyreek Hill. Well, if you look how they use Tyreek Hill, they didn't use Ruggs like that at all.
No, he gets the ball every which way.
Yeah. So to me, that's a 3-faceted thing. Some's on the player, some's on the coach, some's on the quarterback. And I think it's just it seems predictable. I'm sorry, Gruden. Okay. It's just so frustrating because his play. I mean, I'm calling his plays, and I really don't know X's and O's. That's how predictable it is. So that part's frustrating. They know that he's just going to get the jet sweep, and they're ready for it. They're just not being. They're not being innovative at all. It's frustrating to see that. But on the same token, it will take time to get all of the pieces together and get all of the chemistry going. So hoping for the best, but it's definitely frustrating. Yeah, no,
I've also been on Gruden.
Yeah, I mean, I think so with player development. That's the case. I mean, you have to look there, and that's the one thing I didn't like either, because and I know Raider fans will hate this because they don't like the guy. But when you look at a guy like Bill Belichick as a coach, when a player has a bad game or isn't performing up to abilities, Bill Belichick doesn't throw him under the bus. Okay, you don't hear Bill Belichick in a press conference, and as boring as they are, you don't hear him talk like that about players. I heard John Gruden do that a lot. I that's the one thing I didn't like about Gruden and his personality was, they got to get better. They got to do this. Okay, well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You can kind of see that. Sorry, I can cuss on here because I'm not on the radio, and I'm a big beer in. But you know what I'm saying? I'm saying, like, look, you have a rookie, and you're saying he's developmental, and you're gonna throw people under the bus. Look, you can very easily instead say, hey, listen, we have a program for Henry to work on. We're working to develop him to be the best player he can be. That's all you got to say. I just thought that there was a lot of throwing people under the bus on both sides of the ball, by the way. But then there was none with his defensive coordinator until the end of the season when he fires him.
That's a great point.
Go ahead, Chaz. A little abrasive with the rookies, right? That's always how he's kind of treated the rookies, and that's not the right way to do it. There's different ways to handle everybody. Some players, and that's kind of what you get with the scouting, and when you're finding out about what kind of player there are. Some players need a pat on the back. Some players need a little motivational speech. Some players just need to be left alone. And so that's what you need to find out about your guys and treat them accordingly. And it's just Gruden he's never wanted to connect with the young player for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it's strange, but you have to, right, Evan? I mean, you can't not develop young players in today's NFL with the salary cap.
Yeah, for what it's worth, it does seem like Henry Ruggs has gotten the message. I've seen a lot of his social media lately, and he's been kind of posting a lot of the stuff that was said by Mike Mack about him, and he seems to have gotten the message. So not that I ever questioned his work ethic. I hear that was really great. That was one of his strengths coming out of Alabama, was hard worker, great kid, high character, all those things. But he seems to have gotten the message loud and clear, and so hopefully he does, take the steps necessary to improve his game and come into the camp next year ready to go.
Yeah, and Straight Right Sports has another comment here about Ruggs with the knee injury, speed decoy. And Straight Right, you've been great on the chat tonight, so thank you for watching. We appreciate you very much. But I'm going to call BS on this thing, too, because the whole idea that he's a decoy, you don't draft a decoy 12th in the draft.
No.
You just don't. So I had to get that off my chest, man. Nothing against you, but impacts the game without touches. I mean, Straight Right, you might be John Gruden because I'm hearing exactly what John Gruden says from you. And I'm kidding, man. And again, thank you for your comment. We do appreciate you being here. But I just don't buy the whole decoy crap. That was crap. I'm sorry. And I understand it does open, and I'm not disagreeing with Straight Right about that as far as having a player like him on the field does help. It does. But then why the hell aren't you getting him the ball? Again, there's many reasons, but it's got to change. Just like I'm going to bring up one other player because I know we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. But I'm going to bring up one other player, too, who I think is so underutilized in this offense. And I'm not blaming Jason Witten for it because Jason Witten doesn't put the players on the field, okay? And that is Foster Moreau. Evan, what the hell with Foster Moreau? He had the knee injury. I'm okay the first quarter of the season, him having to come back and get to game speed. That's the smart thing to do with a young player. But what the hell happened with Foster Moreau? This kid is an animal, and every time he's on the field and they target him, he does really well. What happened with him? What's your take on the lack of use of Foster Moreau?
Well, Jason Witten, and I don't want to knock Jason Witten because we've been talking about veteran leadership on the defensive side of the ball, and I know that's why he was brought in on the offense to help with that young tight end room, and I'm sure he taught Darren Waller many good things. But Darren Waller's a great talent with or without Jason Witten. I don't think he was needed to help develop Darren Waller. I think it was early on, I thought maybe he was there to help Foster Moreau along with the injury, right? Because he was coming off the ACL injury. But by midseason, why wasn't Foster Moreau more involved? I mean, I don't have the answer. Right. I don't have the answer to that question. I can see early on, like you mentioned, but he was never utilized. And I think it was a wasted season for him. He's a great red zone target. They struggled in the red zone in the second half of the season, and they still never went to him. So to me, it was a wasted year for him. And that, again, that goes back to coaching. That goes back on Gruden, and there's no other way around it.
Yep. So, there's only one ball to go around. So that's the thing when you talk about, you're getting the tweets from people, Renfro should have got the ball more. Somebody else should have got, there's only one ball. They can only do so much. But it is kind of, I know you're getting texts now from Gruden's burner phone, and I hate to be ripping on Gruden. We're just kind of going down that path tonight.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's just kind of Gruden's kind of conservative play calling, when, especially like you said, Evan, in the red zone, it's been so frustrating in the last few years. It's not getting it done.
Well, and Anthony here, our loyal viewer, and we appreciate him chiming in a bunch. He's been very active with it. By the way, the chat on YouTube is on fire, has been great. Just great folks with good points of view, even if I disagree with some of them. He says Carr himself is ranked top 10 quarterback along with the offense as a whole. I think Gruden has something to do with that. Yeah, Anthony,
Right.
Listen, if you're top 10 every year and you win nothing, they didn't win when they had to. And by the way, the offense over the last 5 and 6 games was not very good. So while rankings are great, and I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve credit for that, because I'm not a Gruden basher. We're not here bashing Gruden. We're just talking about some of the issues I think you have to see with the coaching, because he is the CEO of this football team. Mike Mayock is there. Mike Mayock has input. But if anyone has any question on who runs the organization at the Raiders from top to bottom, and you don't think it's John Gruden, then you're not paying attention, because that's who it is. So you have to look at
Anthony,
that, and you have to look at
they're moving the ball up and down the field. They're just not getting it in the end zone. That's the frustrating part. We're talking about Evan, the red zone difficulties. So they are moving the ball, and they are, they're putting up the stats. But the most important stat, as we always talk about, is the wins.
Chaz, there's Justin with your
22.
chat. 22 in the
Right.
NFL and
There
red
it
zone
is.
efficiency. Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about. They're getting up and down the field, but they're not getting it in the end zone. And the most important stat is wins.
Yeah, and Anthony, the defense definitely has a part to play in that. But when you have the ball inside the 20, that's not the defense's fault. It's right. Efficiency is when you do have the ball there. I understand they should have the ball there more. If they had a better defense, then they would have a better opportunity to score more often. There's no doubt about that. I don't agree. You're 100% right about that. But when you're inside the 30-yard, 25-yard line and you can't score, that's not nothing to do with the defense.
There's a reason why Daniel Carlson set the new team record, and right, he broke Janikowski's record this year because they had to settle for too many field goals. That's how you break that record.
And here's the thing, Anthony, if you listen to our show, there's no Carr and Gruden hate. There's no hate, dude.
No hate.
But you have to accept reality. If you want to just hear the positives only, we talk about the positive and negative. We talk about it all the time. We're not a bashing site nor a radio show.
We were bashing the defense earlier.
Well, yeah, that's true.
There's just a lot of frustration. A lot of frustration, no hate.
But again, I think that, look, I said it on Friday's radio show that I think this team is closer to being a playoff team than it's not, which is progress. But at the same time, you have to talk about this stuff. And I think that's the thing too, by the way, and I'm going to get on a little bit of soapbox here, because even with politics, anything in life today, the moment you disagree with somebody, it's hate and you're wrong. That's not what it is. You can have an open discussion and you can disagree. I can disagree with you. It doesn't mean I don't that I'm dismissing your point of view, or that I'm saying that you're an idiot, or that you're a horrible person, or that you don't know football, or that you don't love your Raiders. That's not what I'm saying. We can disagree and have a fruitful discussion without going to a point of it being, well, you're just hating on people. No, it's not hating on people. If I'm critical, people are critical of me all the time. You can look on this channel, people be critical of me, and everyone else who's on our radio show or on the video channel, whatever it may be. And that's cool. I'm all good. I think open discussions are fine. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I have a different point of view. And I think that's where people go wrong. Is what I dislike about fandom these days, Evan, is that if there's like 50% of people who think one way, 50% who think the other, and they both think that they're completely idiots and wrong, and they want to fight about it. No, have a debate, have a discussion, bring facts, talk through it and say, hey, you know what, man? I hear what you're saying. You have some validity here, but I disagree with you, so we're going to agree to disagree. I don't know why there can't be civility there. It doesn't mean people hate each other. It doesn't mean you hate your team or your quarterback or whatever if you bring up really good, I think, situational or observations about what the team is good at and what it isn't.
Yeah, we're not saying the offense is a problem. We're pointing out a couple of the weaknesses on a good offense. They need to get Henry Ruggs more involved. That's fact. Yes, he's involved in what some would say as a decoy. He attracts attention of defenses. Yes, we want to see him get more involved with catches, making plays. That's what we, the three of us, agree that he needs to be doing. We think the offense could be better in the red zone. That's fact. There's nothing wrong with saying that. We're not we're not putting down the quarterback. We've been critical of the coach and his play calling, and he should be critical. We should be critical of him. He's making $10 million a year. He's one of the highest paid coaches in the league. I'm sorry, but when you are making that kind of money, and when you are, talked about as an offensive guru, I'm sorry, you're going to be put under that microscope a little bit more than the other, players on the team. So that comes with the territory. And I don't think it's us being negative or bashing at all. I think we're just kind of pointing out some flaws.
And who put the team together? That's all I'm saying. Who put the team together? It's been 3 years. Who put the team together? And by the way, there's this guy, he used to own the Raiders and he used to have a saying. Remember what that saying is? Yeah. Okay.
Just win, baby.
That's right. So it comes down to that. So it doesn't mean that you never hear us talk about fire John Gruden and all that, because we know, first of all, we know it's not going to happen. Second of all, we're not saying it should happen, but I do think that there's some things. By the way, Wendy, get Chaz to be a guest host with you on a weekday or two. He's going to be on Friday.
That's right.
So Chaz will
Wendy,
be on the show
wishes my
on Friday.
command. Wendy knows I do anything for her.
Well, that's Wendy. So, we got to make sure we take her Wendy. Speaking of fandom, do you see any scenario with fans in the stadium this year? I do, Corey. There's already talk in Las Vegas because Emperor Sisolak, sorry, I don't like our governor. Emperor Sisolak has said that I think it's by March 15th, if things are still going in the right direction, that there probably will be fans at T-Mobile Arena for Golden Knights games. I think it's a small percentage. It's like 20% or something like that. And so I would imagine that by football season rolling around, if we're not at full capacity, that there'll at least be some fans in there. And so I think some of you at least will be able to get to a game at least this year. It might be hard. By the way, Chaz, Raider Pat wants you to go on his show. I've been on their show. You should go on there. So Chaz needs to go on your podcast. I almost forgot about this cat.
Sign me up,
almost
buddy.
forgot about. He said he almost forgot
I'm a
about
Raider
you.
fan. I'm just a Raider fan. I know people saying I'm hating. I'm just venting my frustration, man. I want them to win. Just as bad as you guys.
Yeah. And then, So that, look, again, and I appreciate, look, I have people tell me I'm wrong, and I am. Look, I've been married 25 years. I've been told I'm wrong a lot. So, I will tell you that I'm not saying I'm always right. I have a point of view. You guys have a point of view out there, and we appreciate them. So we always love it. And I don't care if you disagree with me or not. It's all good. And we talk about things. We are not a hater show. We are not that kind of that operation. For most of you that are in this chat tonight, a lot of you, I think I've seen a couple new people. I think I've seen a couple new people in here tonight, but a lot of you are longtime listeners and viewers, and so we're not that way. And so that's the way it goes. But it's always good. It's good to have the conversation, and it's always great to have you guys around. And we're going to do this more. We'll have some news coming up, and I'll explain to you why. We'll have some more time to do some of this stuff, which is great as well. And we really like this format because we get to talk to you, and we get callers on the radio, obviously. And Evan co-hosts with me on Thursdays on Raider Nation Radio as well. So all three of us are involved in the radio show. But it's nice to do this chat where it's real time and we can let loose, and I can let an S word slip and I can have a beer on the air as well. So it's always good. And thank you, Fabian, for stopping by, man. Fabian's one of our loyal guys as well. But Chaz and Evan, man, I want to thank you guys for being with us. We'll fire up these interwebs again and do this real soon.
Definitely look forward to it, man. This was a good time.
My pleasure.
Next time I'll have my beer.
Okay. You will do that. You'll be like, here, hold
my favorite thing. My favorite thing is talking Raiders football.
That's right.
The lights are out. Perfect timing. I got to refresh my drink.
That's right. See, it was just long enough. It was just long enough, man.
Power just went out. I'm done.
All right, and the power just went out too. God, Chaz, you're in that bad grid where they're turning your power off. All right, Chaz and Evan, thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon. All right, there's Chaz and Evan. Thanks to all you guys for being with us as well. And just a reminder, tomorrow we don't have a radio show. It's a holiday tomorrow. I took the day off. Kill me. I've only had 2 days off from the radio show twice. 2 days off. That's twice, isn't it? See, that's what happens when you drink on the air. Since August 3rd. So I'm taking tomorrow off. We'll be back on Tuesday, and the rest of the week we'll be back on Raider Nation Radio. If you have not listened to our show, then make sure you do. It's very easy because I get some of those. Good night, Wendy. I get some of those folks who are like, "Hey, how do I stream the show?" And I tell them all you got to do is really go to the Raiders app. If you have the Raiders app on your phone, the official Raiders app, it streams right there. You just hit the radio button and you're able to do it right there. So do that. We'll be back 2 to 4 every day, Pacific time, that is, for those of you outside the Pacific time zone. But I appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you like the channel, let people know about it, and also let people know about the radio show. For Chaz and for Evan, I am Scott Gulbransen. We appreciate you guys being with us. Take care, Raider Nation, and we'll talk to you real soon.